Hey guys, what's going on? Nick Cooling here, and I'm back today with another franchise ranking. Today I'm going to be doing the five prom night movies. You heard right, five. Who knew there was five of them? I certainly didn't. I knew there was a sequel or two and the remake, but yeah, I just had no idea there was five. This is something like Silent Night, Deadly Night, where I'm like, there's what, six of those? Huh? I'm like, there's six. Anyway, besides the point, I just figured I would get this franchise out of the way before Christmas comes. It's interesting. This is my first time watch through all these. It's probably one of the bigger franchises. Well, the first one's a classic there. It's probably one of the bigger ones like that I never got around to before. So it's really interesting to see how they changed throughout all these sequels. This is also a Canadian franchise where I'm from, so that just makes it even more interesting for me. So without further ado, let's just get right into these. So coming in the last place, we got the remake, reboot, whatever you want to call it, Prom Night 2008. This is a really weird remake because it literally has nothing to do with the first one. And a lot of people give it shit for that, but to me that doesn't really bother me because no one wants an exact same copy of your original, or what's the point of doing it, right? But besides that, it has way more problems that people should be worried about. It's a PG-13 slasher. I even watched the unrated version. I actually have the Blu-ray, and even the unrated version's watered down. It's super tame. Especially for a slasher, you don't want that in your slasher. The characters all pretty much sucked. I didn't care for them. They were serviceable, but the main lead too. I forget her name. Check. But I didn't care for her at all. Brittany Snow, that's her name. But yeah, I didn't care for her at all. The way her acting, anyway. The killer is, alright. The killer's motives was pretty cool. How he's a teacher that's obsessed with this student, right? And will go to anything to try to get to her. But the execution was terrible. He doesn't have anything unique about him. He's just like a regular person. Nothing, like, looks wise, pretty bland. And this whole movie's kind of bland. None of the kills are inventive. They're all pretty much just stabbings. And yeah, barely any gore because of the rating. Like I said, even in the unrated version, there's a little bit more blood, but kills are still pretty all weak. And just the story itself is really weird. Like, a prom night at a hotel. Like, I don't know if this goes on in the States or whatever, but I never heard of it where I'm from. Like in our town or city or whatever. Is this odd choices? Yeah, there's just no suspense. There's no thrills. There's nothing here to be desired. It's a movie I'll probably never watch again. Maybe in 10 years when I forget how bad it is and I'll put it back on. And I say it's bad, but it's not like Seed of Chucky bad. Well, maybe. I think I might prefer Seed of Chucky. But it's not... It's well made enough. Like... Even the shots, there's nothing really unique about it. It's passable as a movie, but it's definitely not for fans of slashers because they'll just probably get pissed off at it. And yeah, it was just boring. I didn't care about the outcome. I would have rather them all die in the end, like every one of them. No one left survived. But anyway, this is last place, Prom Night 2008. So coming in at number 4, we got Prom Night 4, Deliver Us from Evil. This is a 1992 flick, or 91 in December, I think, in Canada. But besides the point, this is a weird entry too. This is the only entry to focus on religion. The killer is a priest, and he's just out for people sinning. He'll kill them, right? They locked him away. He escapes, and he starts pursuing these 4 people hanging out together at this random house instead of going to their prom. And I don't know, this is very cheap, this movie feels. It at least had the balls to go back to the serious tone of the first movie. Yeah, there's not a whole bunch of good here, but there is some interesting things. Like I said, the religious thing. Like, just having a priest as a killer is interesting enough. And he has one or two maybe interesting kills. Nothing too great, though. There's actually a really cool rooftop scene with the killer like stabbing through the ceiling of the attic, trying to get at someone on the roof. That was really cool, I found. But for the most part, this movie's pretty dull too. but at least it had a serious tone, and it was R-rated. It wasn't this bullshit watered down slasher. It was still serious enough. It gave you what you wanted, not at the best quality. But yeah, this is definitely not as bad as I thought it would be, being the fourth Prom Night movie. And it really, and that's what I don't get. People hate on the remake for having nothing to do with the original, when none of these movies had anything to do with the original. They're all completely different. 2 and 3 are tied together a little bit, but barely. But getting back to part 4, the location's pretty cool. It's this house like by the woods, and there's snow everywhere in that, which is another odd thing for a prom night. I guess it depends where you live. But yeah, this is just a pretty lowballing slasher, but it's not watered down like the remake, at least. But it's not great either. And before I move on, it's really interesting about how they have the main final girl be like, doesn't matter what it is. She explains that she would have to tell her priest, and like for forgiveness and that. You know how religious people are because of sins and stuff. And that kind of worked really well with the killer being a priest too. So, but there was just too many stupid moments in this movie where, you know how people run and trip and fall. Well, people in this movie run away with guns while the killer comes at you with a knife. It's stupid in a way, but I can see me coming back to this movie in a few years probably. It was interesting. It piqued my interest. It's just not played out the best. Now this is where the ranking is going to get very controversial. Coming in at third place, we got Prom Night, the original, 1980, with Jamie Lee Curtis and Leslie Nielsen, the only two big actors pretty much in this whole franchise that I noticed anyway. And yeah, this is like, from here on out, all these movies are passing material, they're passing grades. But I found this one was pretty weak for being a classic. Like, don't get me wrong, there's great stuff about this, and if you have nostalgia for this, if you've seen this back in the 80s, you probably still love this movie. And I'm not taking that away from you. But it's a slow burn. It takes about an hour before we see a real on-screen kill. Like, the first hour of the movie is more almost like a detective movie, it feels like, with atmosphere, though, like a slasher. And that's one thing this movie has a lot of, is atmosphere and the build-up before the kills. Even though the kills aren't the greatest, there's a nice build-up to them in the scenes. The killer, at least he has an iconic look. He has the ski mask on and a piece of glass for a weapon, which is really cool. I forgot to mention that in part 4, the priest had almost like a cross sword, which was also pretty cool. But yeah, there's a big twist at the end. Like, it's like a whodunit this one plays out like, and you're trying to guess who could be the killer, and it does a really good job at giving you a few red herrings here and there. Like, is it the custodian guy at the school? Is it, you're trying to pick up on all these, and it actually fooled me. I did not guess who the killer was, which is always a bonus for a whodunit. It's just that I also wasn't really like shocked either. I was just like, oh, it's that guy. I guess that works. So, yeah. The kills aren't that great in this either, but there's one cool one. You get a decapitation, which is always awesome in a horror movie. And the way the head rolls out on stage at prom is just really badass. Yeah, it's just a slower movie. Not the craziest kills for a slasher, but it's decent enough. It definitely deserves a passing grade. And like I said, I only watched this once, so I imagine multiple viewings would probably get me more into it, like most movies. And getting into the characters, Jamie Lee Curtis is okay in this movie. She looks gorgeous. I just feel they're all serviceable. They're all good. There's no one that really did a bad job with the acting, but no one's really outstanding either. Even Leslie Nielsen. They're just serviceable characters that played by pretty good actors. So, making our way to number 2, we got Prom Night 3, The Last Kiss, from 1990. And I could not believe how much I enjoyed this film. Like, I never heard anything about this movie before I watched it, except for a day before I watched it. I posted in Killer Flicks about part 2, and Wolf Myers, Wolfman's Got Nerds, he got his own channel, go check him out. He mentioned that he preferred part 3 as his favorite of the franchise, and I'm like, really? I didn't even hear of it before, and I had no idea what to expect. And I went in, and I loved it. It's the most horror comedy we get out of this whole franchise. It's not a slasher. This is more of a like a teaming up. I don't know how to say it. Like he's pretty much teaming up with the ghost of Mary Lou, and she's killing people off and using him to clean it up, which is a really cool dynamic. You get almost like a love horror story, which always works out good. It's something that Warm Bodies wants to be, and Return of the Living Dead 3 did a pretty good job at. The kills were pretty inventive. You get a lot. I think this is the most kills, I might be mistaken, in the franchise, this movie. But they're done in a really cool, inventive ways. So yeah, I just really enjoyed the journey that this one took. With him trying to hide all the bodies in the football field, so the rest of school or nobody would find out. It's just cool, and there's some pretty funny scenes in it too. It feels cheap. I'll admit it, almost like 4, but I still got a kick out of it, and I had a good time watching it. So who cares how cheap it was, right? And like I said, and the only thing, Mary Lou, I really would have wished they would have used the same actor as they did in part 2, because I just loved her charisma, and I know she was a bitch there, but I don't know, there's something about her. She had this certain charm to her in part 2, and this one, the different actors did a good job. She didn't do a bad job or anything. It's just that I don't know, I love the other one so much more, and that's the only thing that kind of brought this one down. Yeah, it's just a goofy, fun time. So, if you guys were paying attention to the movies I named so far in my ranking, you must have figured out my number 1, which is Hello Mary Lou, Prom Night 2. This was just such a fun surprise. Who I would have never guessed. I was about to say, who would have guessed that number 2 would be better than the classic original that everybody puts up on a pedestal. Not many people talk about part 2, or no one talks about 3, and I like both better than part 1. But 2 is just a fun, kick-ass time. You got Mary Lou, who doesn't have too much screen time in this movie because she's possessing. This is a possession movie. But when you do see her, she just, like I said, she has such charm to her. And I don't know, it's just someone I would love to meet, even though she's a complete bitch. But she's written that way, and it works. You're rooting for the bad guy, pretty much, which is always good screenwriting. And like I said, this is a possession movie. It's weird. The first one's a slasher, then you got a possession, then you got this almost like ghost romance weird movie, and then you got part 4 back to slasher, religious slasher, and then we get the stupid watered down remake slasher. So it's very odd franchise. But yeah, this one being a possession movie, she possesses the main girl at school, who's like a good girl, and wow, it's like changes her, and the girl has a lot of Carrie dynamics to her, like she's like somewhat religious, and she has a crazy mother, not to the standards of Carrie or anything, and it's about prom, right? But this is also like Carrie if you mashed it together with Freddy's Revenge, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, because that's a possession movie, like Freddy possessing Mark Patton's character, Jesse. But yeah, this is pretty much the same thing. Hello Mary Lou. Well, Mary Lou is possessing the main chick, the blonde chick. I can't remember her name. I just watched these 5 movies straight, so. And yeah, is making her do these crazy things, and she's even having these nightmares, which was another thing that reminded me of Nightmare on Elm Street. And it's just done very well for the amount of money that they had, which was very little. And yeah, it's just like, I can't speak highly enough of it. It's just a kick-ass time. You just can't go in expecting The Godfather or anything like that. Just go in just to have a good time and not to be a critic, and I swear you'll have a kick-ass time with this film. And it's funny because pretty much the only thing connecting these movies together is Hamilton High, the name of the high school, except for the remake. They didn't even bother putting that in. It feels like that was the laziest out of all this. So that's it for my ranking. You got my number 1, my 2, my 3, my 4, and my 5. From worst to best, this video went. So I want to know is, how do you guys rank these films? Have you even heard of the sequels? Do you hate them? Do you like them? I want to know all that stuff down in the comments below. Yeah, you might notice I have a different setup right here. I'm moving stuff around. I've got a brand new TV over there, so I have to figure out a new setup in here. So stay tuned for my new setup coming. And yeah, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, guys.